Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Instinct as well as the latest episode of Deception. Like always, I'm going to talk about something you want to listen to. You can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the special shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Instinct, you can skip to what I have to say about this week's episode of Deception. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Instinct. So this turned out to actually be a very interesting episode because it started off with them in the middle of a case, which I kind of like it when shows do that, when it's just kind of like a case you never really get all the details to. It's just kind of like, well, you just come upon them in the middle of the case. Basically at the tail end of the case. This deals with this dude named Theodore who killed somebody. It's just about, I guess, some business, kind of one of those like businesses where you invest your money and it turned out all kind of be a scam and probably lost everything. Well, the case starts there, but technically the case of the episode doesn't start there. It doesn't start until Theodore dies in a hospital. And then it starts looking a little suspicious because now you have Dylan kind of thinking like this wasn't an accident. There might have been more to it, that maybe he eventually kind of starts getting to the thought that maybe it is an angel of death type of thing. Obviously, what kind of caught me off guard too was like the surprise, because obviously you had that Dr. Walter and then you had the nurse Albany. You're like, obviously you kind of have a feeling where it's like, nah, she can't be the killer because it's like she's a suspect numero uno, so it can't be her. But what took me by surprise was she was actually the one that tipped Dylan and them off about there being some suspicious stuff at the hospital. Like, she's the one that's like, oh yeah, this wasn't the first kind of suspicious death at the hospital, because it seems like she's cold and uncaring, but in actuality it's because she's doing what she's ordered to do. Like the higher ups, the admin, like Riley, he's telling her like, people who have little to no insurance, deal with them really quickly, send them right back on their way. It's like, we don't need to take time to dedicate to these people. There's not enough nurses, so she's kind of like spread a little thin, but like how much time she can even dedicate to one person. So she comes off looking a little cold, but that's actually because, truth be told, she's forced in this position. She actually wants to do more. She cares about doing her job. She just can't because under the circumstances she's put in. And we also find out that her and the doctor are having sex. I figured that's what that was like all leading to. Like, I figured it's like, yeah, Dylan and Lizzie are most likely going to walk in and having sex, and we saw that at the beginnings of that happening. So that was just kind of interesting to me. Like I said, she turned out not to be a bad person. Actually, she's like a very good person under these circumstances who's just kind of forced because of her job. In particular, the person overseeing her job, the admin at the hospital, kind of forcing her to kind of not do her job to the best of her ability. So she actually was a very caring person in the long run. Hence why she and let the cops know ahead of time, because she's like, I try to do things right on my way, but my side of things, but I couldn't get it done. So she was hoping that the cops could. So, I mean, this all actually came about because also Dylan also got help from Julian on multiple levels in this episode, which I thought was kind of neat. Him and Julian kind of quote unquote breaking in. Obviously they kind of snuck in, wore the wardrobe and everything. Basically someone sent a signal to the IVs and basically turned them into murder weapons. That's kind of what's happening with this whole situation. In the long run, it was like, okay, so who could be the person behind this? I did not expect it to be Rebecca, like the tech reporter. I know she performed. It should become obvious because with all the crime dramas I watch, it's usually the person you see the least in the episode. Sometimes they shift that up and it's like the person that you see or talk to the most in the episode could end up being a killer, but it's just like you don't really click and put it all together. I didn't even notice that detail until Dylan went back, that the dog was barking at the same time something was happening. It's like, right, so it has to be something on a sonic level because, you know, there's certain frequencies only animals can hear that humans can't. So, but it was just interesting to me. I mean, basically her reasoning for behind all of this is kind of a little bit of combination of Dylan's situation as well as Lizzie's, because there's a whole situation of like, Lizzie knows what Rebecca's going through because she lost her fiance because of this hospital. Like they misdiagnosed him and they didn't treat, because like I said, it's all about money for the higher ups, and he died because of, so she's been killing all these people that kind of basically raise red flags. It was kind of her way of kind of sticking it to them, like causing all these problems for them to kind of have to, like, I guess ultimately it was to kind of draw people's attention. Kind of similar like Nurse Albany, but I guess she kind of went about it in a more like deadly route. I guess it was kind of her point. But, you know, Lizzie could understand. It's like, I know exactly what you're going through. I lost my fiance. Dylan can understand because we ended up learning this episode. Like, I mean, you could tell early on, like, he didn't. I was like, I don't like hospitals. I was like, it has to deal with your mom doesn't. It's like, yeah, she had cancer and just all the time he spent in hospitals. It's not that his mom was mistreated. In fact, he loved her nurse. It's like, her nurse is what gave him, like, hope in the whole situation. Just that she was able to kind of make his mom laugh and kind of smile under those circumstances. And it's like, that's why because it just all brings back all the memories of him and his mom. It kind of gets even deeper than that, which I'll kind of get to in a second. But you can understand why Rebecca did what she did. I mean, you don't understand, but she was driven by grief, is what this all did. It's kind of crazy because it always blows your mind, because it's like, oh yeah, Dylan talked to her at first and it just seemed like, hey, I'm just a reporter that wants to help out. I mean, to be fair, because we did hear from her boss that, like, oh no, some people dropping dead at a hospital, that's nothing. That's not really anything. It's not the type of story that could, that type of thing. So that's probably extra reason why she did what she did, because she wasn't able to run the story. Like, she calls all those murders to cause more of an issue so that, people would get involved, start looking into it. And when she tried to, her boss, or editor, was like, no, that's not juicy enough, essentially, So going into it, like, going back to what I was bringing up about Dylan's mom, his circumstances are interesting because obviously he was having Lizzie, like, when Lizzie was kind of going undercover and talking to Rebecca, trying to get her to confess on everything. She ended up using Dylan's, backstory, like the reason why he hates hospitals because his mom, and he ends up being like, oh, they didn't treat her right. They just kind of stuffed her over in this little place. And it's just, yeah, you could tell that he wanted her dead all along. It's like, who? My dad. And then Lizzie kind of had a pause and like, the doctor treating her. And it's like, oh, so Dylan kind of blames his dad because his dad, like, he feels like his dad didn't treat his mom with the utmost respect. It's just kind of like, I guess in his mind, it's almost like his dad treated her more like a burden of like, this is an issue, kind of a blight, kind of do whatever. It's like, it's not that big of an issue. And it's just like, in his mind, it's like, you wanted her dead because she was such a burden, because it was such an issue for you to have to deal with. You'd rather her be dead than alive, And at least that's how Dylan looks and views at things. Like, we know he has a complicated relationship with his dad. We've already seen that firsthand. But I think, that whole situation just adds more fuel to the fire, essentially, So it's kind of sad. I want to, like, really quickly, too, because Julian did help him out this episode. I am curious, will we ever get Dylan? I mean, will Dylan ever introduce Lizzie to Julian? I also really appreciate the fact is he used the little duplicate badge she gave him, because it's a duplicate shield, because it's like, okay, this is a shield just in time, because, it'd take a whole long explanation about the whole, like, oh, why you're here situation. It's like, just flash a badge and everyone won't ask questions about who you are. Like, it's hard to, break down the whole consultant thing, which I thought was kind of neat. And he kept it, and he used that. He even signed Lizzie's name. And she's at 88 episodes like, give me my badge. Give me that duplicate badge back. He's like, when can I get it? Oh, you can get it back. He's like, really? When? She's like, the moment you go to the police academy and graduate. And you haven't just been kind of bummed out about it and everything. I just loved it. It's like you went and squandered it. She probably would have forgotten all about it, but now she realizes she can't trust you with this power. You're too irresponsible to handle it. This is also a nice episode going back to that element of like, oh yeah, Dylan isn't much for following authority, which is so interesting because Julian calls him out on it. It's like, okay, you talk about leaving the CIA because it was too institutional, and then you literally join an institution like the NYPD. I guess he figures as a consultant, the rules don't apply to him as much because as he is a consultant, he has a little more wiggle room than Lizzie or any typical cop can. Hence why he can go to Julian to get information that isn't 100% the most legal way of getting information, but it's such a gray area. So I also like this little side story that just popped up for a little bit in the episode is Pete from last episode actually pops up in the episode again, and he's like, yo, so I'm seeing a therapist, everything's good. Sadly, I got fired from my job because, the whole, like, stalking thing. But hey, I'm in a position where it's like, oh, I can be help, my therapist helping me kind of get a new job and everything. And it's like, oh, she suggested I come to you for help. And Lizzie's like, wait, you want me to help you get a new job? Which maybe that's going to be something we see recurring. Like, I don't know, maybe like he'll be kind of a consultant that they can kind of come to because he maybe use his stalking for good and using him to kind of work the streets and kind of find information they typically won't be. Maybe, I don't know, because the fact is they went out of their way to bring Pete back like that just kind of makes me think like Pete might start popping up in a more recurring stance, which I hope so, just because I love to kind of dive deeper into Pete. Besides, it also seems like he's kind of got a thing for Lizzie too. which also feeds into the other storyline in this episode, which dealt with Lizzie working out this dude named Jeff. He's like, oh, I'm a personal trainer. I was like, oh yeah, this. And during all the movements and stuff, it's all flirty and fun until she hits him and he starts bleeding from his nose. He's like, no, it's good. It's like, really? They trust you with a gun? You're kind of a badass weapon on your own. Just like, ha, 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 ha. I was like, oh, this is kind of a sweet thing. It's kind of like, okay, showing that, potentially Lizzie is ready to kind of move on potentially. So it's like, probably recognize him flirting with her, but she probably never was like, oh, I'm gonna go on a date with you type of thing. Turns out, asshole turns around and tries to sue her for it, and it's like, oh, she did it on purpose. It's like, what? You piece of crap. And Dylan suggests that she goes to Andy. I guess she didn't know that Andy used to be a lawyer. I guess that's information we as the audience know. I mean, obviously Dylan and Andy talk about that. That's why we know. But I guess like Lizzie is never part of it because he's like, oh, you should go to Andy. I was like, oh, so he can make me a drink. I was like, no, he actually used to be a lawyer at a pretty big law firm. And he's very good at his job too, because he kind of pushes her buttons because he knows like exactly. It's like for you, it's like this is a he said, she said situation. Is all about likability. The fact is you kind of lose your temper, kind of makes people kind of not want to believe you in this whole situation. So, but fortunately, Andy was able to help her. Turns out that douchebag Jeff has done this multiple times. Because I even love that the lawyer is like, wait a minute, you work for that law firm? It's like, yeah, so I got to be out of here in like 30 minutes. So we're actually going to countersue you for this, so which was pretty neat. Because it turned, like I said, he's done this to plenty of people too. It's kind of part of his tactic, which is like, man, you were just a piece of garbage, aren't you, doing that? It's like, oh man, like I said, I thought it was going to be a sweet little storyline about like, oh, you met under these circumstances, and then it turns out he's suing you. I was like, what? Oh, that piece of crap. I thought he was going to be a nice dude and everything, but turns out not to be the case. I guess it is a little suspicious that he shows up to the park and he's like a trainer and stuff like that, and he just happens to have weights with him and stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe I feel like that's not the place you really bring weights. I don't know. Like, yeah, you can do stretches and working out in a park, but I feel like, I don't know, who carries around weights with them? Maybe I'm just being oblivious to certain like things where people do that, but it doesn't seem like that's the type of thing working out you typically do on the out. But hey, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm very close-minded when it comes to the whole exercise world, so I don't know the ins and outs, so I can't really speak on it. It's just, I don't know. In retrospect, it just kind of seems a little odd. Like he meant for her to have those just so it can go into the whole "oh, you hurt me" thing. I guess because it's a lot more impactful if you have like quote unquote weapon to kind of fit like, oh yeah, the injuries, blah 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 type of thing. So I did kind of forget to talk about it, but it is kind of interesting because of Dylan's whole approach to everything, because he is kind of very behavior analysis type of person. Obviously he kind of feels the most sorry for both victims. Obviously Leslie feels bad for Rebecca, but at the beginning, like, Dylan kind of felt bad for Theodore. Because they're both people that were kind of screwed over by these Goliath, these kind of like big time businesses, because it's like you don't really have anyone fighting in your corner. You kind of have to handle everything by yourself, where it seems like the laws and everything is kind of stacked against you. So it's just kind of interesting, because it also seemed like that's some common ground that Lizzie and Dylan kind of bonded over in this episode too. It's that whole like, yeah, because Dylan kind of frowns upon that whole situation anyway, too, like the whole big business, and just like, he doesn't like things kind of being such a one-sided fight. So overall, a very nice episode, and I'm very interested to see what's in store for the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Deception, a great episode. I really appreciate it. Is what I kind of thought it would be. I was like, okay, so maybe on this other side of the episode, in this other episode, we'll get like, camera side of things. And we did, and gave us a lot of stuff that we're going to break down. I did appreciate it, because even though it's just kind of like, oh, we get to see that side of things, we learned a lot more about them. The whole circumstances. We learned more about the mystery woman. We already knew what length she was willing to go to get what she wants, but we saw it even more so in this episode. The fact is that during the test that she ran Cameron through at the beginning, she gave him a loaded gun for her. It's like, all my tests are real. There are no fake tests for her. So, which is kind of interesting. It's weird because this episode kind of gave you your main antagonist and kind of gave her a little personality that we got to know. She's a little jokey and has like these moments. Like when they were going after that dude for Cam to replace, like Cam was like, we don't need to kill people. She's like, okay, what if I told you the guy hunts giraffes? It's like, does he? She's like, if I say yes, will you be okay with me killing him? He's like, no, because Cam's super against the whole killing people. Huh? And then like it's like, oh, that brunette that was with you, yeah, send her back in. She can work for her tip. She grabs a knife and tries to stab him. Cam box her, and it's like I said, they add a little more charm to our villain. It doesn't change the fact that she's an evil person, but I do appreciate they added that little levity to her character. Basically, because I figured as much. It was a combination of what I thought. I was like, it has to be something like she's threatening people that Cam cares about, the reason why he's doing all this. It's like kind of that, but mainly it's because it would mean saving John, because she has evidence proving that the lady was there beforehand, which is kind of interesting. Because the lady died before. They didn't kill the lady on the spot. And then it's like, no, she was dead before they showed up and placed her body there to frame John. It's like, you went out of your way to kill a lady. She's like, the way she makes it sound, it almost sounds like she was like, well, she never outright says it, but she's just kind of like, oh, she just fits someone that fits the situation. So I'm guessing it could be that, or maybe it's like she didn't actually kill the person. It seems like more likely that she would, but there's a part of my brain that's like, well, maybe she didn't. Maybe she found someone that just happens to look like her. She has the money and resources, so she could make it happen. But it's most likely she just did a little research, found the person, and just killed him, because it's just a lot easier and faster that way. Also, just showing how good Cam is in this whole situation. Like when Bishop was checking him for the phone, just switching the hands, like switching pockets. It's like, yo, he's too damn smooth at that. I really appreciated that. And what's kind of also interesting too was the fact is that Bishop got knocked down and everything, and then Cam did the whole thing, and then when she returned, he was like, yo, oh, wake up, Bishop. He's like, oh yeah, go ahead, let her know that I kind of like tricked you into kind of spring and knocking yourself out. And then the moment she comes around the corner, like, oh yeah, he's like, oh yeah, good job, Cameron. I really thought that was kind of nice too. It's kind of interesting because I do like what Cameron brought up about the mystery lady too. It's the fact, well, mystery one, is the fact is that she shows these different personalities to different people to kind of lure them in with all this and that. It's like, because it's like, because even tried to tell Bishop, it's like, you look at her as an anarchist, that she's going to tear down a system, but it's like, she's benefiting from the system, so why would she tear it down? And it's like, you look at her as an anarchist, so she plays that role to get you to trust her. And it's like, can't you see she's just playing you? I mean, sadly, it comes out to be true, because once you prove to no longer be useful for her, she kills you. She killed Bishop. I thought when it was all said and done, it's like, oh, it's part of a play to kind of get Cameron to work with her. But it's like she said, her tests are always real, because she wanted to see would Cameron actually pull the trigger. So, because she is willing to, like, I'm curious, because the moment she brought up the story about the whole Aurora Borealis thing, and the Cam didn't remember, she was like, forget it. I was like, she got the wrong twin. And that's something she figures out later on, because when she goes to John, she goes, I put the wrong twin in jail. It should be your brother. Because I figured it's because of that, I guess because she saw something in him that night, but she just assumed, because she at the time didn't know about the whole twin brothers thing. So she assumed the one she met that night was Cam, not realizing it was John because he never gave her his name. So this whole situation is she kind of did it backwards. Like, it's actually supposed to be Cam this one in jail, because the whole situation was to force the one that she was after to kind of join up with her. I guess that's what this was always about too, because I guess she figures if she can push them to do it, like if she could get Cam to do it, she can kind of tap into that darkness in him, that willingness to do anything, and probably, it's like he'll be more in line to kind of do what they like, whatever it is that her and her group are trying to be a part of, whatever they're trying to do. It's kind of interesting because, like we already talked about it, it seems like John might already have a little bit of that darkness in him, but maybe it's just because of his current circumstances, which that situation might kind of flow a little more in line with the mystery woman. Because the fact of the matter is, she wants John, but now it's like, after putting him in prison, will he actually ever work with you? Because there's that moment when he was solving the final piece of the puzzle, like she pointed a gun to his head, but then she started hearing him talk and figure it out. Was it just because he figured it out? But the look on her face made it seem like it almost felt nostalgic. I think in that moment is when she realized, like, okay, John is the real twin that she should have, like, but after all this time, we still don't know what exactly went down 20 years ago when they met to kind of spark this in her, why she's doing all of this. Cam did discover that this whole situation revolves around these, like, he went into that storage, that cargo container, and it looked in there. There's all these mannequins, and it's a replication of this specific scene from a specific picture that Cameron and his family has, and it has his like great grandfather Alistair in it, while with all these other different billionaires. So, like I said, it has something to do with their family, but I guess it is kind of like a situation of like like I said, maybe something was stolen from her family, like I've been saying, and she's just trying to get revenge, and she figures the best way to do that is with one of the blacks, like in particular, who she thought was Cameron, but then actually John, be able to help her get what she needs because their grandfather has some. Maybe that's all this was, like a piece to the puzzle, because she wants one of them because they're the ones who'll be able to help her find what she's looking for. Like maybe each one of them stole like a relic from back then, and maybe it's stuff that's connected to her family. It's like, oh, this stuff was stolen from my family. I'm trying to get it back. You know, my family was kind of erased from history, and I'm trying to put our name back on the map. The name that was stolen and buried and burned by these Cameron's grandfather, Alistair, as well as all these different billionaires and stuff like that. That's always been my assumption, and maybe that kind of feeds into that more, but ultimately, kind of have to wait and see about that. I also appreciate the fact is that one person that was in on this whole situation was Jordan. And he's like, why'd you call me out of anybody? You could have called Gunter, Dina, why me? He's like, because you're the best liar. He's like, oh, thanks, boss. What's also interesting later on, he's like, yo, you convinced me not to do this, you know, for K's sake. He's like, oh, really? What did I say? And it's like, wow, Jordan, you literally gave him the advice that kind of made him not go through with it. Because for him, he didn't want Kay to have to suffer the ramifications for him doing this, because she would be the one to kind of pay for it, because she's the one that went out on a limb, bringing him in as a consultant. That's also his partner, and also because there's something obviously there. So that's ultimately what made him. I did like that when John got to him, and he like I said, Cameron's really good at that. I guess Cameron's just because Cameron is very talented. Like John is very talented, but like I guess is the situation is John and Cam are both kind of have their own specialties, and I think sleight of hand is Cam's specialty. I don't know if John has quite the skills like Cam does, but you know, there's stuff like planning stuff out that I think John is better at than Cam. Because this episode also dealt with them going back 20 years, their dad having Cam locked up. It's like, no, Cameron has to be the one because he's the better showman and everything, but it's John that helped him because John is like, yo, I'm always going to be here, bro. Like, you don't have to worry about doing this alone. So also shows you what kind of person your dad is, kind of throwing Cam in head first, because Cam didn't want to be the one, but like this whole responsibility of being like the great magician and stuff like that was kind of forced upon him. And Cam's already admitted it too. The reason why he devotes himself even more to it is because on some level he was hoping that he would get his dad's attention and respect, you know? But it seems like kind of probably much like the mystery woman, everything they did with their dad was probably a test. And it probably was always harsher on Cameron. And maybe it was kind of harsh for John too, because John was always kind of forced to the back. It's like, oh, I'm not good enough. So, you know, maybe that caused some resentment there, but I don't know. What I'm also curious about is John sincere about not remembering about that? I mean, to be fair, it is 20 years ago, but whatever it was, it made a huge impact on the mystery woman, but maybe not on John, or maybe maybe he doesn't remember, maybe it hasn't just quite, maybe he has, but he doesn't like know what it's all about. So I don't know. Because Kay, when she brought it up to him, brought up the location, didn't bring up the whole like Aurora Borealis situation. If she had said that specifically, maybe it would have triggered. So maybe John doesn't outright remember, but given enough time, maybe he will. I am curious to see, will the mystery woman try and break John out of jail? Because like I said, will John work with her under the circumstances? Maybe if he finds out the truth about what she wants through all of this, maybe that'll kind of spark something in him to decide that he's going. I mean, that might be kind of where the season takes us, where he goes on the run with her rather than trying to clear his good name. He decides to start working with her. Maybe it's all part of some trick to be like get close to her to get the information he needs to like, you know, clear his name. But still, I do appreciate, like I said, it seems like the mystery woman is good, but it does seem like it's a situation of she doesn't do everything herself. Like she does kind of like have her own team of deception. She had that dude who's kind of like the explosives dude. She also has like the person who's kind of their makeup artist. So it's like she has a team built around her, and she herself isn't necessarily like, she's good at kind of deception herself, but she's not to the level that John or Cam is. That's why she needs him in the first place, to be part of her team. Hence why she had Bishop, but even Bishop isn't on the level that Cam and John are. So, especially to get whatever it is that she wants in the long run, we still have no idea exactly, but we know it's connected to Alistair and those, like, that group of billionaires in whatever shape or form this is all about. I mean, granted, in the long run, Cameron did still kind of steal the diamond, but he ends up revealing at the end that he didn't do it. So he's probably still going to suffer some ramifications, because even he admits, like, he could have ran away at any point in time, but he didn't. And I think that's also a good thing, too, because it shows that, yes, he's willing to do whatever for the sake of his brother, but there are lines he won't cross, like killing someone or betraying Kay, who's put so much faith in him. I mean, we'll probably still seeing him suffer the ramifications for that in the future. I'm also curious to see what happens, like, when the truth comes out that he was actually working with Jordan the entire time. Will that even come out or not? That'd be kind of interesting if it didn't. Because that might piss other people off, too, because it's like, Gunter might look at it, whoa. You trusted him above me? I could have kept a secret. It's like, but you're a terrible liar, Gunter. Like, what are you talking about? Look at, like, you know? So it might be something we deal with. Because it's something even Cameron, I mean, I think it probably comes out because Cameron's like, I betrayed everything. Like, I betrayed my team, I betrayed Kay, I betrayed all of y'all to do this. Because for him, he was willing to do whatever it took to, you know, save his brother. But, you know, even he, like I said, recognized that, like, there are just some lines you shouldn't and can't cross because there won't be any coming back from it. So, like I said, I'm sure his problems are going to be a little lenient. Maybe it'll kind of be like a suspension type of thing. And maybe next episode he tries to work to kind of be back in the FBI's good graces. I don't know. We'll kind of have to wait and see on that. We also did have John kind of admitting, like, yeah, Mike's a good guy. So it's like, I understand, like, what's happening between you. I mean, I guess it's like, oh, he's a great FBI agent. And Dina's kind of like, stop. You know, I interpreted immediately when he said that as, maybe he was being sincere, but I interpreted it as him being sarcastic and stuff about how Mike was taken out like that. But still, because it's a well-orchestrated plan, so it's kind of hard to kind of count against that, especially because she was already so close to him. Like I said, I also do appreciate the fact is that even though she is as smart as she is, like, she's got all this orchestrated, she isn't that, like, it's not like she's on next level smart, because there are things even she can't calculate for, like, oh, the FBI showing up. Even the fact is that them bringing in John, she didn't see any of that coming. Like I said, we'll have to wait and see if there's any points of distrust kind of brought up between Cam, the FBI, as well as, you know, his team, his deception team. We'll see whether there'll be any long-term ramifications for that. But also, like, you know, figuring out what this mystery woman is up to. Is it about returning artifacts to people as Bishop thought, or is there something much bigger at play here? Whatever the fact of the matter is, like I thought, it does have something. There is a connection between this and Cameron and John's past. We'll just have to wait and see what that's all about. Hopefully they kind of talk about that in the next one. Either way, next episode, I kind of slurred on that. I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us either way. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good